Welcome to the very first episode of A Week at the Indies. I'm your host, Michael, aka Hogosha, and I'll be running through this week's Xbox Live indie game releases, all to answer the question, is this game worth your time and possibly money? To do this, I'll put them into the highly scientific categories yes, no, and maybe so. Let's start off with the yes games, shall we? First game in our yes category is Atoms. Atoms is a sort of area-controlling board game, much in the vein of Othello, or Reversi if you grew up playing all your board games on Yahoo while chatting up bored housewives from Australia. Each player takes turns placing their colored atoms on the field, and instead of surrounding your opponent's pieces like in Othello, you can place multiple atoms on each square. When you hit a certain number of atoms, the thing goes critical and explodes, and you lose that square while spreading single atoms to the adjacent squares. Those atoms join up with whatever was there, and if an opponent's atom just happened to be there, you claim it as your own. Under the right circumstances, this leads to epic chain reactions that spread over some, half, or even all the board. The game pretty much plays out like what the Cold War could have been. A few minutes of everyone building up an arsenal of radioactivity, everyone afraid to make the first move, and then someone leaves the keys and the launch codes out on the desk after an all-nighter, and boom! The dominoes fall and someone's wiped off the face of the map. Some call that random, others call it chaos, I call it hilarity. 4 people can play locally, 6 online, or if you want, you can just add some bots to spice up the crazy. Games feel short enough that players knocked out don't have to wait too long for the next round, and it's at least mildly entertaining for them to watch the pretty lights. All in all, it's definitely worth a look for anyone that enjoys digital board games and weighs in at a mere 80 points. Next up is Shootout. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed the demo for this, considering first-person shooters give me nausea-inducing migraines. I wish I was joking. The 20-minute demo for BioShock laid me out for an entire weekend, and 5 years later, people still bring it up. Regardless, Shootout brings me memories of the weapon trials in Perfect Dark, back when I didn't get motion sickness at the drop of a hat. No blood, no incoming enemy fire, and no getting called racial slurs that 12-year-olds shouldn't know in the first place. It's just you, your weapon of choice, and a bunch of targets. Maybe it's the leaderboard lover in me, but that usually equates to a few hours gone before I know it. Lots of maps and unlockable weapons, plus a healthy load of in-game awardments, not achievements, round out a game that hits its own target rather than trying to aim for something already done by the big boys. Shootout will cost you 80 Microsoft points, and I imagine FPS fans will get much more value out of it than the $1 asking price. Speaking of indie games and their successful mainstream brethren, here we have Angry Fish Halloween. I'm pretty sure it doesn't take a whole lot of smarts to figure out where the inspiration for this game came from, and because of that I also don't imagine I have to go into too much detail with this. You shoot fish out of a cannon, and you try to get rid of all the cats on the other side of the map. If there are things in the way, deal with them. Rinse and repeat for 63 levels. If you like Angry Birds, but don't feel like spending $40 to play it on your 360 and are hoping it goes down in price, you can do a lot worse than throwing $1 at Angry Fish Halloween. Plus, when you're done, you can also buy roughly 39 other physics-based puzzle games on the Xbox Live Indie Games Marketplace with the money you saved. Just trying to help you out. And rounding off my favorites for this week is this weird thing, Block Slam. After 3 decades of Breakout, Arkanoid, and an endless supply of remakes and clones, if someone came up to me and said that a developer would do Breakout in a completely different way, I'd think they were trolling me. And yet, here we are. The effort alone is worth a look. Block Slam puts you in control of generic guy with a hoodie, as he kicks a ball around an arena, getting rid of blocks and collecting power-ups and points. That's really about it. If the ball ends up going through certain walls in the area, you lose a ball. Very similar in concept to Breakout, and yet the fact that it plays like a third-person shooter mixed with soccer makes it completely different. Now, I'm not going to say the game controls the best, nor am I going to say it's easy to keep track of the ball, or even to kick the stupid thing. Oh, and what I said about motion sickness applies about 8 times over here. Just thinking about how much I move the camera around makes my stomach churn. So execution-wise, it's not the best of the bunch this week, and the theme of the game is laughable. Something about the future and a Powerball, and really it wasn't necessary. But it's the idea itself, the fact that someone went out and made 3D Breakout and even tried to make it realistic rather than you're a freaking paddle again. It's genius, and I can't help but recommend that everyone at least give the demo for Block Slam a look, and maybe even buy it at its $1 entry fee, just based on the old gift-giving saying, it's the thought that counts. And let's get to the no games. Beer Pong 2. Maybe it's because I don't drink, but I don't see the fascination with beer pong. I'd rather watch the old Bozo show and see the little kids putting a ping pong ball into a bucket than watch overgrown kids do the same thing while making poor life decisions. So, admittedly, I went into this game with a little bias, and also admittedly, I had a small amount of fun with the trial, as the game is essentially a physics puzzle game with the words beer pong added to it. But the amount of trial and error that comes with a timing-based power bar, plus the fact that the ball will bounce however it damn well feels, equates to a giant dose of frustration where it's really not needed. Seriously, ping pong balls don't drop at a 45-degree angle from 5 feet up and then just practically roll on the ground after one bounce. I guess if you really like beer pong and yelling at your television, you can do worse for 80 Microsoft points, but in my case, I just wanted to punch a nun by the time the trial was over. Next up, we got Island Adventure, The Beginning. Hello, pandering. Island Adventure The Beginning is a point-and-click adventure where your reward for putting up with unskippable narration by a guy who needs to take a microphone out of his mouth before talking is more of said narration, but with a 3D model of a woman who can't possibly be comfortable in what she's wearing or how she's posed. I feel like I'm witnessing a subway groping when he talks and she appears. In the demo, you go from trying to sneak up on her while she's bathing, to staring at her, to her being on top of you while she is interrogating you at spear point. All with a script that looks like it's straight out of an AOL role-playing chat room of the guys that are trying to cyber out their power fantasies with girls who are really guys. I'd feel more comfortable walking into my grandparents having sex than playing this thing. Next! Finishing the no category up this week is Colorball. Really, I don't even know what to call this thing. It's like a puzzle game, but the puzzle is, are you colorblind? No? You win. Maybe it's fun after the trial when you're creating different colors with 2 balls, or splitting the ball into 2 other colors, but essentially all you do is throw colored balls into the goal when the colors match. I played 3 rounds and was still waiting for the fun to start. And in the maybe so category, Alphabet Sub. Alright, so this one isn't for anyone who would be called a gamer. If you have really little kids and you want something to help them learn the alphabet, this might be worth the 80 points. Really, that's all I got for this game, and if you don't have kids, then this is a straight up no. So let's move on. Next in the list of maybe so is Ethel's Ice Cream Shop. Have you played Diner Dash? Then you've got a pretty good idea of what we got here. Ethel is a starving college kid that needs to pay for her schooling, but her mom cut off her financial help for being a slacker. So Ethel's got to join the working class and put in her 9-to-5 as an ice cream jockey for random 90s anime characters. This game fits squarely into the dexterity time suck category that Diner Dash has made somewhat popular. And though it's not for me, it might be for you. Yes, you, with the Sailor Moon avatar. Don't worry. I won't tell anyone if you go buy me Blizzard. This game made me crave some DQ. Speaking of ice, here's some Canadian pastime with hockey action. Ever since Blades of Steel and Ice Hockey on the NES, I've wanted a good pick-up-and-play hockey game. I'm not quite sure this is it. It's easy enough, except the puck shooting felt really difficult with the right analog stick. Or maybe I was just playing it wrong, I don't know. Even when I did get a shot or 2 off, I didn't know how and I couldn't replicate it. I enjoyed how the controls were all either analog sticks or bumpers and triggers, so you kept your thumbs and your fingers on all the buttons at all times. And if I couldn't gotten used to the shooting, I might have come away a huge fan, but after the trial was over, I was just scratching my head. That said, I think there's a good game here, and it fits squarely into the maybe so category, which means you should try it, especially if you're into hockey, even if I suck at it. And Johnny Carnage is up next, which is a platformer shooter from Milkstone Games, and it's one of the many examples of my love-hate relationship with the company. As you can see, the game looks great, and sounds great. In fact, as with all Milkstone titles, the presentation of Johnny Carnage is top-notch, and the idea seems fun. You have to rescue girls from scary skeleton guys, and the only way to do that is to shoot roughly 1 bajillion things and jump around and throw grenades and get more weapons, and well, it just sounds like old-fashioned arcade goodness. There just isn't any soul here, no hook, no careful thought process or balance or wow factor or character or anything. It also doesn't help that the demo lasts for 1 level, and that level might last you 3 minutes. If you try the demo again, you'll probably clear it in about half the time. You could do worse for your 80 points, but even if it was free, I'd just feel like it'd be forgettable at best and boring at worst, like a frozen pizza when you want Italian. And last this week in the maybe-sos is Misfit Battles, a game that seems to miss the point of its inspiration, the original arcade Mario Brothers. In Mario Brothers, the point was to beat each enemy-filled sewer level by killing a certain amount of enemies. If there were two of you, then you could mess with each other, but the main point of the game was still to beat the level. In the Super Mario 3 battle game, there's only one goal, to defeat your opponent. You can do this by collecting coins or having them die, but the game was over once one happened. This game misses both by touting itself as a competitive game, but it doesn't end when only one player remains. In fact, it's then so easy for the single player to stay alive for another 3 or 4 minutes or whatever that I don't know what the point was. In addition, your rank is based on how long you survive, so it just comes off as two completely opposite modes slapped together without either keeping its own identity. In addition, movement is all or nothing and can't be done with the D-pad. There's no variable jump height, and invincibility after getting hit lasts for probably a third of a second, if that. It just feels like a giant mess. On the upside, all proceeds from the first year of sales go to Child's Play, the charity drive started by the guys at Penny Arcade, so there is the warm feeling of donating to a good cause. I just wish there was a good game to go with it. And that wraps it up for this first episode of A Week at the Indies. Remember, all of the Xbox Live indie games have a free trial, and one person's trash is another's treasure, and all that cliche garbage. So if you think I trashed something that looks good, give it a whirl. Thanks for watching. I'm Hogosha, and I'll see you next time.